everyone, in this video we're going to look at how to pick fonts for your logo. Now you can just pick any old font, there's no real rules, okay, but there are some guidelines that I'd like to share, just some kind of rules of thumb that might help you at least narrow down the fonts. It can be tricky just scrolling through all of the fonts and just picking them all and not having any sort of framework to work from. My tips and tricks, you might disagree with some of them. You might do the opposite of what I say. That's totally fine too, because you need to know what the regular way is to be able to do the opposite, if you get what I mean. So let me share some of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm picking what is quite an important font for a brand. It is the font used in the logo. All right, let's jump in. All right, first thing is I kept my first page, okay, that has the kind of all the different logo marks all over it. And I picked one, even if you haven't really decided on one yet, just pick one. I find picking fonts, just using the same symbol or logo mark makes it life easier, even if you double back and go, all right, I'm going to change this out to something else. Otherwise you end up way too many versions and it's hard to compare. I've also duplicated mine a bunch of different times. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Now let's talk about how we're going to go and pick fonts. It can be tricky. You can just click on here, click on this, and just cycle through all the fonts, okay, and just go and pick a bunch of them. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want a little bit of structure and, I don't know, some rules to follow along. The first thing I do is I go and check out my competitor analysis. What you'll find is that there'll be generally some kind of like consistency. Okay, back here, this is where the most of the market is. This is kind of some of the more radical stuff that I decided, remember, and this is way out radical. So if you know what you're trying to do, as in maybe it's a small brand and you're trying to fit in with everyone else, you're trying to look like you are, maybe bigger than you are or more established than you are, then it's probably best to pick a style of font that's in here. You can borrow somebody else's font. There's no trademarks on actual fonts. Something that's being customized like this, you won't be able to copy, okay? But I bet you it's just a standard font with a slightly altered T here. Okay, so you can borrow other people's brands by just using the font. That's why some big companies will design their own fonts, so you can't copy it. The other thing to do is that you might look in here and say, all right, is there consistency around the fonts? And most of these here are what's called a sans serif font. You can see one of them is not, this one here. So this one here is a serifed font. Serifed of these like little feet. See the bottom of the eye here? There's little feet on the bottom. Those are serif. Sans serif, sans is Latin for without, okay, is without feet. So that's like this one here, okay? This R has no little feet at the bottom. Serifed, sans serif. If I was trying to be a bit more progressive, okay, some of these ones here, I like this one. There's a rounded font. And what you'll slowly do after time is you'll start to work out kind of the types of fonts and their names. Some of the things you can do to help is, let's click on this one. I'm going to click on both of these. So shift click them both and click on the font. And over here under fonts, okay, you can go, see these little labels here? They've kind of broke them into kind of like the main groups. So handwriting's easy, corporate is corporate. Display is anything kind of like weird and wacky. You'll start to get used to things like, oh look, sans serif without feet, serif with feet, rounded, kind of discussed that before, modern. Okay, you kind of get a sense for what the names are by kind of circling through these. So if I wanted to fit in with the rest of the brands, okay, and kind of look like I'm part of the gang already, I'd click on sans serif and I'd go through and pick a sans serif font. Now this is where you spend ages scrolling and clicking, okay? Nothing gets you past the scrolling and clicking. The one thing you can do though is do yourself a favor. If you're picking a font, right? Whenever I'm looking for a font, I'm less inclined to pick this one. Actually, I've got mine set to free, just for the people that are following along using the free version. And I'm less likely to pick this one. Why? Because there's no weights to it. Because a really neat trick for working with fonts and trying to get some like separation and a bit of hierarchy is when you've got different weights. So let's have a look at Barlow. What do we got? Oh, Barlow's a good one. I get excited because I'm like, oh, look at all these different weights. Whereas this one here doesn't have any. And this one here has only two, regular weight and a bold, okay, which is good. But what you can do with something like Barlow here is you can say, all right, I want them to be black, okay, but I want the bottom part, okay, it can be the same font weight, that's totally fine. But what I like to do is go through and say, all right, I'm gonna make you medium. Okay, it gives you this kind of like, I don't know, it adds a bit of hierarchy. It says like, this is the most important thing and this thing is secondary. I'm using my arrow key just to tap it around. All fonts need a bit of lining up afterwards. I find that's probably too heavy and I'm gonna go to bold. Oh, I'm digging it. Here's a bump over again. So that's one way of doing it. Look at the competitors, figure out what you want to be. You want to be radical? Do you want to be the classic style? Fit in with everyone else? And remember, that's going to be different for everybody's brand. If you're a tattoo parlor, this logo like that is going to be very radical. Because tattoo parlors don't do this kind of sensible combination mark. Do you get what I mean? It's good to know where everybody else is, to know where you want to stand. Do you want to fit in? Do you want to stand out? Simple. Radical. All right, another trick for picking a logo or text for a logo is to go for opposing font style. So up here, if we stick with Barlow semi-condensed, and down the bottom here, it's kind of a rule, kind of not a rule. The rule is don't use two different sans serif fonts together. If you're gonna use Barlow at the top here, use it down the bottom as well in a different weight. You can totally flout that rule, but if you're looking for a little bit of structure and a little bit of like rules to pick fonts by, it often can look a little weird when you've got one font there and it's you know, that one there is a sans serif and that one's also a sans serif. Often the good trick is if you're going to try and do something different in terms of different fonts is to go completely different. So that one there is a sans serif font. Down the bottom here, we're going to use handwritten or a serif font. So let's go up the top here. Let's go back from sans serif. Let's go to a serif font and find something that's going to work in here. Let's go droid serif. And another trick is we've got Oz all cap. There's no reason why it can't be camping and outdoor. And often that kind of contrast of sans serif and serif is a nice kind of combination for the two. There's also the random just clicking and picking fonts as well. I'm trying to give you a little bit of structure in the course. If you're like, oh, I just want to pick a font, Dan, you can pick any font you like. If you want your font in cactus-shaped, Western themed, that is totally fine as well. Figure out when everybody else does and either match them or do something completely on purpose. Then pick the font and a different weight. If you're trying to combine two different things, if you're just doing like this, that is easier, but often not. And if you want to pick two different fonts, it's often best to change the font category. Okay, so that is a sans serif and this is a serif, or this might be handwriting, that might be sans serif. Let's have a look at some of the competitor analysis. Actually, let's look at our mood board as well. It's funny how consistent this is. They've kind of combined the names with no space and just gone uppercase to kind of break the words up. They've done it there for Zen Camp, there for that. Same for Fun Camp there, Hoot Camp. You can see it here. That's a good example. There's a quite hand-drawn or display font at the top here. It's quite fun. It's not very sensible. Okay, and down the bottom here is a very clear, simple sans serif font. Let's have a look at our competitor analysis. Now, when you're looking at competitors, some of them are just not nice. I'm not going to point at anyone, but there's some terrible ones in here. This one here, see, they've gone for the weight. They've gone for same font, slightly different size like we've done, and they've gone for a lower weight. Same font. This one here, they've gone for two different fonts. This one here is called a slab serif. So it's a serif, like we talked about, okay, like this one here, but this one here's got a big badushy slab on it. They call that a slab serif. Are you meant to know these all? No, but I bet you in Canva, they probably have Canva Sans. Do they have slab serif? Let's have a look. Look. Slab serif. There it is there. Fun. Narrow. Okay, you'll find them all in here. And after a little while, you get a sense of like what they're called. Now, the way I've given you is quite clinical. Another way that I'm going to show you, oh, I dragged that out. You can actually drag these tabs out from each other if you're using the Canva app. Okay, it's not what I wanted to do, drag them back in, is sometimes it can be a little bit, I don't know, I feel happy just going through the boring old fonts and just kind of like experimenting and doing combinations. You might be like, that's so boring, where's the exciting stuff? So I'm not going into font, I'm going into the text tab, and let's just click on, can you see down here, font combinations? Somebody's gone through and found some interesting combinations already, and it might just be a way, let's click on this one here, and even if you don't plan on using it, okay, I just like to go through these guys and go, all right, what is that one? Dynamo, condensed, and there's Dynamo down here, obviously outlined, I think. Oh no, what they've done is they've gone and added an effect to it and gone hollow. Oh, fancy. So that could be really helpful just to go through. I'm going to delete those now. Okay, and I might go, all right, I'm going to try this one in a Dynamo. I'm going to have to clear all of that off and just type in Dynamo. There's a couple of Dynamos. I'm going to go that one there. Oh, but there's no light version. But there's this weird one. Anyway, you get the idea. You can go through these and just get a sense for what other designers at Canva have kind of put together. Otherwise, it can be a little bit tricky going through and going, all right, and just picking from this like list over here of boring old fonts where it's, I don't know, it's not very exciting. Sometimes it's better to see it in situ, like here. All right, so I'm going to go through and pick some other font combinations using some of the rules and maybe breaking some of the rules. Hopefully you found that interesting, maybe give you some ideas about how to pick fonts. You might have your own ways, that's totally cool. But I thought I'd share some of the industry standards and some of the ways that I go about picking fonts for quite an important job like this, for picking a logo.